All right, well, hello and welcome again to a new episode of the KewCast. I'm John, and I'm joined again by my friend Eddie. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, John.
All is well?
Yeah, I like the way Chris said it today. Here's Johnny.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like at one point. So we were just playing.
And I'm Ed
some pickleball with
McMahon.
friends.
That makes total sense.
Yes.
It just clicked.
No, you're more than Ed. Ed just sat there and was like, hey-o.
I'm good with that.
You provide more, Eddie. You provide more.
I think half our audience will completely not get that.
Half our audience, that's a fair estimate.
Yeah.
The other half is going to be like, hey, it's right
Right
up
up
our
our
alley.
alley. Yeah, exactly. It's a little too new, the kids.
So anything fun and exciting happen to you this week?
Man, John, it has been just a crazy week. I got 2 kids going to college, one cross country, one right down the street in Boulder, but still it may as well be a cross country. It's just been up to my eyeballs in packing and logistics management. It's just insane.
Bananas, right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You're not quite there yet.
Not quite there. My kids are going back to, all of them going back to school, high school, middle school, and grade school. And next week, actually, one of them's in this week, the other 2 next week. But yeah, not a crazy house like yours. Even though you're about to be an empty nester, it must feel like chaos right now.
Well, we just got to get through this first phase. Because my son has an apartment in Denver that he's moving across country to go to Penn State. So all of his stuff, his furniture is now in our basement. You know the story. But
God.
it's a lot of reorganizing right now.
It's a lot.
Good stuff.
Good
Proud
times.
Proud of them both.
Yeah. Well, I had a nice, peaceful week last week. I was an empty nester myself because my kids were at their mom's house and Michelle was in Florida visiting her mom. So I had the house to myself and got a lot of work done. You might notice if you follow my paddle database that there were about 20 new paddles entered last week. I did a lot of testing. We'll get into that later. So why don't we jump into the next thing? So we do have some big news. We have a title sponsor this week.
Really exciting.
Yes, and this will be the first time we actually have a sponsor for the podcast. And we talked about this, and we wanted to do something that we both, know very well and believe in. We're not going to just, do a pay-to-play thing where people give us money and we read their ads. We have to believe in the products, and it has to be paddle adjacent. So we're not going to be doing ad reads for paddle companies. That'd be a conflict of interest for me as a paddle reviewer. But clothing, on the other hand, is ripe for the picking. So, Eddie, you set up basically a relationship with Centerline Athletics. Do you want to fill us in on who they are?
We picked well on that one. Centerline is really a pickleball-specific clothing manufacturer. They've got a relationship with Thomas Wilson, pro pickleball player, and their clothing, although their line is quite limited, just shirts and shorts right now, as far as the Centerline Athletics line goes. Their technology is just the best I have ever played in. And we've played in a lot of different things. But for me, their technology, I think, is just standout. And they're a great company, great people.
Definitely athletics-centered company. Centerline, they have a sister company called...
Chevile.
Chevile?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was pronounced differently. Funny.
Maybe. It's Italian.
Civil is how I was pronouncing it. But
Chevile.
So between those two companies, there's quite a big diversity in clothing. I mean, not huge, but it's all athletic centered. It's pickleball focused. You can get, you're wearing the wardrobe today, the hat and the shirt, and I've got the shirt on. These shirts are very comfortable. I've been impressed.
Yeah, I would say Chevile is more their lifestyle pickleball brand.
Okay.
So kind of the fun side of the house, this hat.
Yeah, definitely some of the better performing clothes I've played in. So yeah, we'll put a link in the description, and you can use the code JohnQ to get discounts. I think there's a 20% discount on their clothes with our code. So.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you, Eddie.
Yeah, you bet.
Let's move on to, next is going to be the Pro Tour recap with Chris Cali. Coming
back.
Yes. He and I recorded a small segment yesterday. Move into that right now. All right. We're here again with Chris Cali from Sorry Not Sorry. And we're going to do a pro recap this week. Chris, I think you and I are a couple of the only people in the pickleball space with beards, full beards.
Oh.
Are we the only ones? No, there's Justin from Pickleball Pursuit. Justin's he's got us both beat, man. He's got that big, burly, long beard. I can't think of any others though. I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
There aren't many pro players either in the pro tour with beards, if any.
Robert Slutsky, do you know who that is?
Slutsky, yes, I met Slutsky in Dallas. He's got a sweet beard.
Not just a beard too. He's got like a full-on afro, and he just. I mean, it's kind of cliche to say at this point, and I'm sure he's heard it 1,000 times, but he really does look like the Geico caveman. Like, remember that commercial from back in the day? Like that is him.
Yeah, except he's jacked. It's impressive. Super jacked.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Let's get into it. So, like I was saying before we pressed record, I was watching a couple of days of PPA Kansas City, Friday and Saturday in particular. I did not get a chance to watch any of the finals, so I'm gonna lean on you to walk us through that. But yeah, let's get into kind of memorable points. You know, I jotted down a few, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, memorable points. Let's see. To me, had to be Gabe Tardio and Federico Staksrud. I think that's like the most memorable thing to happen. They beat Ben and Colin, which I don't know. I think at this point it still has some significance, but they've been getting beat more and more and more and more. So I think in a few months that's not even a big headline, but for now it still kind of is. I think the bigger part of that though is the fact that it's Gabe Tardio again. Gabe Tardio just seems to be the guy that figured out Ben Johns. And it seems that the formula is just be attacking from the right side, and it's kind of cool because we're seeing pickleball develop in real time with these new strategies, people trying different things out, So, yeah, it was kind of cool to see that happen again.
Yeah, for sure. Gabe's definitely the secret sauce and beating the Johns brothers. But I think Matt Wright, spearheaded that whole attack the left side of Ben on the right side as a right side player, which is kind of fun because Matt's one of the oldest players, if not the oldest player in the PPA, and Gabe's one of the youngest. But Gabe's taking it to a new level for sure. He's so crafty with the speed ups, and you don't know where they're going. They're so deceptive. Yeah, he's definitely got Ben off balance, which is odd to see. Ben's usually so calm and collected and minimal movement, but you see him stretching and kind of, misjudging where Gabe's going.
Yeah, it seemed like they were actually like inviting the speed up from Ben too with his backhand, which I thought was interesting. They weren't like afraid to give it to him, and then they were just ready for the counter. And Fed is just rock solid, on the left too. So, man, that was they're a fun duo to watch.
Yeah. For sure. Well, they took it all.
They did.
How was the final match? They took on J.W. Johnson Dillon, right?
Yes. It was pretty crazy. They pulled it off in 3. They were actually down. I think it was in game 2. They were down by quite a bit, and then they ended up coming back. The best part of the match, though, I have to say, is when the game was like tight. I think they were down like 5-0 or 6-0 in the second game, and then they kind of came back. I think they were down by 1, and they headed to the sidelines, and on the sidelines, Gabe Tardio just picks up a piece of pizza and just starts eating this pizza, and you're like, what? That's so... First off, where did he get that? And you're just like, is this going to slow him down? Like, I think most people would look at a piece of pizza and be like, that's a lot of carbs, that might slow you down, but man, it seemed to have like fueled him, because after that, they were just off to the races. They played so well. And just so hilarious to see him. And then when they won the trophy at the end, they gave him like the pizza again, and he was just eating it with the trophy.
I saw some memes of that. Yeah, I was like, "What's with the pizza slice?" So yeah, that was his fuel. That was his protein bar during the game.
Yeah. Who needs like a Cliff Bar when you could just have a slice of pizza, pepperoni?
Well, yes, good on Gabe and Federico. What an amazing team, and John's brothers. They're having issues this year. They're having issues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely getting worse and worse. They actually played in the bronze medal match for men's doubles, and you could literally just see that they were not into it. It's funny, too, because the announcer, Rob Cassidy, sorry, forgot his name for a second. Rob Cassidy was even commenting on it. He's like, I hate to see this body language. Like, Colin is just standing, like, straight up, like, not crouched at all, and man, it's just like they are just, I don't know, man. They're just like starting to lose interest, it seems like. And I honestly, like, I am enjoying Ben losing. Not because it's like Ben losing and it's personal, it's just like you like to see the underdogs win. You like to see someone take down the top guy. But in order to have that enjoyment, you need a top guy. Like you need him to win to make it special.
Yeah.
So I do hope that something changes because it just doesn't seem like the Ben and Colin thing is working anymore. And a lot of people are saying maybe Tardio is the guy that he could play with.
Yeah. There's a lot of chatter about potentially Ben finding a new men's doubles partner. Colin going away or going to a different team. But yeah, Tardio and Ben. Wow, that would be fun to watch as a team together.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, obviously Tardio's young and a little bit inconsistent. I mean, you even saw it in the match where it was like few speed ups into the net, but I mean, he's not even 20, I think, yet. He's like super young. So yeah, he's got plenty of room to grow. And imagine growing under, the wings of Ben, like by your side. He's coaching you on the sidelines a little bit. I know Ben doesn't really talk that much to his partners, but who knows? Maybe he would like kind of say some things. It's hard to know. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to imagine that there's much that you could really share with a professional pickleball player that they don't already know. But I don't know. Maybe Ben's got some insight on some things that could make him better. It would just be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and vice versa. Gabe's got that young take on things and non-traditional way. It might go both ways and help Ben out too. Improve his game because a lot of people are catching up with Ben. Ben's still definitely the GOAT, best pickleball player out there, but the rate of improvement is not as quick for Ben, I'd say, as for other people coming up in the ranks. All right, well, Chris, why don't you walk us through some exciting points? I've got a few here, but maybe we landed on the same one, but why don't you go first?
Well, I think the one that we both thought was really great was the quarterfinal match between Ben Annalee and Christian Alshon and Etta Wright. That was insane. And it was just really funny. Like, it made me laugh multiple times watching Christian scream and then Annalee scream, and they're just so different, because it's funny because it's like it's really like it's kind of really cool when Annalee, this young girl, hits like a winner on them and she screams, but it's like kind of silly because she's like and it's like, oh, that doesn't sound aggressive.
Okay, and the Lioness screams at Alshon right there.
I just love it so much.
But then Christian Alshon will like hit a winner on this young little girl, and then he's like, "Ruh!" And it's like,
oh, okay. Christian.
All right, your scream is cooler, but it's not as cool to hit a winner off of this little girl, even though she is the best, But it was just kind of a fun little thing going on, and what a great match! A lot of cool points. There was this one point in the second game. I mean, it was just some of the most insane gets. Etta Wright and Christian Alshon were playing incredible defense back at the baseline. And I've never heard Dave Fleming scream so hard in his life. He's like, "Oh my gosh, Etta Wright!"
Oh, no way, Etta! No way! Oh! Let's go! Etta Wright has them on their feet in Kansas City. Are you kidding me, Etta?
Oh, I mean, that's one of the craziest points that I have ever seen right there.
So, yeah, if there's one match that you're going to go back and enjoy watching, definitely go check out that match for those that
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, man. Well, I look forward to seeing your show this week. Sorry, not sorry.
Good stuff, man. Appreciate you having me back on. Looking forward to next week.
Yeah, for sure, Chris. All right, dude. Take care.
And we're back.
And let's go. So, latest news, gear gossip. First, I wanted to mention that I've made a few updates to the website. Firstly, I have a new poll. So the what should I review next poll is back up, and I have a whole new collection. So I have the Pickle Hurricane Pro. That's a paddle that a lot of people have been buzzing about, emailing me and saying, hey, the metrics in your database on this paddle look fantastic. And we remember you talked about it briefly on the podcast as a good paddle, but would love to get a full review. And that paddle is performing very well. So that's something I do want to review. Another one on the list is the 11.624 Monarch series. So we have the Control and the All Court and the Jelly Bean. Their wide body option. That's been another very popular request lately. The OM Aero is the third paddle, and that is not actually advertised as a paddle, it's advertised as a pickleball racket. And it uses tennis racket technology. It has a full carbon fiber frame, and they build it differently than other paddles. So third option. Fourth option, Proton Series 4. That's actually coming out on Thursday. It's the last I heard from the owner of Proton. That'll be on Proton's website and Pickleball Central. They'll be selling those. We also talked about that briefly on the podcast.
Is that the Kevlar one we played with? Okay.
Yeah, that's the Kevlar one. That one's getting a bit of buzz. Fifth is the Grooven laser varieties. So they're Kevlar
Talked a
paddles.
little bit
from
about
Grooven.
that one as well.
Yeah. We had a couple weeks ago, we did a showdown for the wide body Kevlars, wide body and standard shape Kevlars. And one of those lasers is standard shape. And then lastly, the Thrive Surge. So Thrive put out the Surge. We talked about that a long time ago.
Did we?
Yeah. One of our first podcasts, Scott from Thrive sent us most of the paddles, most of them unreleased at that point. He released the Azul first. The Thrive is the hybrid shaped.
The Surge?
Yeah, Thrive Surge is their hybrid shaped, and it's basically competing with the double black diamond. So it's very similar and makeup, both in terms of the dimensions and the raw carbon fiber surface and all of that. So, that's the last option. I also put in the sixth option, other, and you can fill in the blank of paddles that you'd like for me to review. So
we did this once before. Mm-hmm. What was it that you ended up reviewing based on that poll?
that one was the Honolulu J2K.
That's it.
There was an issue with bots at that time. So if you own a company, if you're one of these companies, please don't send the bots to the poll. I did set it up where only one device can vote once, but that doesn't mean hopefully there are no ways around it, but I'm not that optimistic. But yeah, let's play a fair game, guys.
So vote now for your choice for the paddle John will review next.
Yeah, I've got others in the pipeline, including some of these. I definitely want to review more than one of these, but the first one of these to review, I'll choose from the winner of the poll. So please do pop over to johnqpickleball.com. I'll put a link in the description for this particular poll and make your choice.
Right.
Other big exciting news, Eddie, on the website is that I've been working with developers who I met this gentleman in San Clemente when you and I were there competing at the PPA. And he was a fan of our show and watches my paddle reviews. And he is a developer and database manager. So he has all the skill set. And we started chatting. He's like, hey, I've got some ideas for your website and your database on your website. And I was like, that's fantastic because I've got ideas, but I don't know how to actualize them. And the database has been blowing up. Not only have I been getting more and more entries in terms of the paddles, but also have been adding metrics. And now it's like 30 columns and over 200 paddles. And it's unwieldy to basically scroll around on the screen the way it is. So this week we'll roll out a new paddle database, and it is enhanced with analytics. So you will be able to filter and then compare two paddles, for example, and look at where the metrics fall with regard to percentiles. And you'll be able to filter a whole group of paddles, the whole data set if you want, or narrow that down to, let's say, wide body paddles, wide body Kevlar paddles. And then that's going to give you like heat maps. I'll show some B-roll footage of
that in and of itself is pretty cool.
Oh, it's super cool.
Yeah.
I'm really stoked to play around with this. And it's going to have all the same data that's in the current spreadsheet, but in a much more user-friendly form, and the ability to filter and do some data analysis yourself as a user.
So will the opening user interface still be kind of in that spreadsheet form, or is it more or less an open form?
It'll be an open form, and I know that there are a few people, I shouldn't say a lot, but a few people love that really raw spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I think I'll keep that open, at least for a while, to let the people who are really used to it and dialed into it still play around with that. But all the data is still going to be there. It's just going to be a lot more user-friendly.
Very nice.
And a lot more powerful interface to be able to interact with that data.
So that's coming up next week, you say?
This week,
This week.
tomorrow. Yeah, we're just making final touches on it today. And by the time this podcast is aired, it will be live.
All right.
Link in the description. All right, Eddie, another big news item that happened last week. So if you were watching the PPA Kansas City, you may have noticed some new JOOLA paddles. Mm-hmm. Newly branded JOOLA paddles. So the JOOLA 3S models. So there was the Alpha and then the Gen 3, which was the production model of the Alpha, now the Gen 3S. And those are rumored to have a little bit more muted power than what the Gen 3s were before they got delisted, and somewhere in between the Gen 2 JOOLAs, so the Perseus, Scorpius, etc., and then the Gen 3. So somewhere in that in-between ground. Another big news item last week is that there was a stamp on those paddles that said UPA certified.
I saw that. Yeah.
UPA is now certifying paddles for PPA use. Mm-hmm. The UPA did release a statement regarding that, a pretty brief statement, and people have been speculating. I did get on the phone with Jason Aspis, the lead there at the UPA-A, to kind of get the lowdown on what exactly is happening. So he gave me a lot of information. So basically I asked him, are there any other paddles right now that are UPA certified? And no, it's just those JOOLA 3S models. And it makes sense for JOOLA to do that, given that they are currently in a lawsuit with USAP, and probably there's a lot of lawyers telling them not to deal with the USAP right now. So another agency to approve their paddles is fine, and it works for them. I asked them for some details on like the pricing for JOOLA, what they're paying, and if that's going to be representative of what's going to happen roll out next year. And he gave me that information a lot and gave me permission to state it. So JOOLA is currently paying per month $6,000, a prorated amount, and the goal will be for paddle companies in 2025 basically pay that same amount annually. It's not going to be exactly that. Maybe it will.
Why
maybe
a per month model?
Because they started mid-year, right? So they're not going to. It's just to get through the rest of this year.
I see.
And then at the beginning of 2025, it'll be
72,000.
Yeah, 72,000 annually. So not the 100,000 that they stated originally, but close. And this will be annual starting 2025. And it's also there's per paddle fees like the USAP charges. So it's $5,000 per paddle to get approved, and then $1,000 per variance. So let's say you have the JOOLA Perseus. That's one paddle. That's $5,000. JOOLA Perseus 16 and 14. So that's $1,000 for that variance, that thickness level.
I see.
Then you have the Scorpius. So now that's a different model. So another $5,000. So that's the way this pricing scheme works. And the money's going to the new testing that they're doing, which I'll talk about in a second. I asked him more details about this. And this is just for PPA, at least for now. And there's just for companies that sponsor big pros, right? And there's only about 20 paddle companies currently that are in these pro sponsorship at the PPA level. So it's going to affect next year about 20 paddle companies. The rest of them free to make their paddles.
So does it mean anything today that JOOLA is the only company with this certification?
Not really. I mean, it's right now it's a interim program. It's going to kick off in full next year. So that the meaning of that being that next year by January you will only be able to play with UPA certified paddles in the PPA as a pro. I can't recall if he said that at amateur level too. I doubt it. I think you'll be able to play with the USAP approved. So
this really just gets JOOLA ready for 2025. It doesn't really do anything for the next few months.
It made sense for JOOLA given the lawsuit with USAP, and they have a new paddle line right now that they'll be able to sell and not have to deal with whatever's going on in the court of law right now.
So they will sell these 3S models to the public?
Presumably.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's the mod TA-15 out right now, the Perseus mod. That one's USAP approved. But back to the UPA approval. I asked them, what are the regulations that they're enforcing? So, what does it look like compared to the USAP regulations? And right now, during this interim phase, at least until next year when they roll out the full program, they're testing deflection and they're testing spin. So deflection is, they're actually using a more stringent deflection ceiling than the USAP does. So they're raising the ADF, the acceptable deflection of force, to 46 compared to 42. And what that basically means is the paddles will be less powerful. They're capped at a lower power than is currently allowed by the USAP. And again, deflection is an indirect proxy of exit velocity. So it's not, it's not exact science yet, but still it correlates very tightly with the power of the paddle. Deflection does. So they're making that, a higher bar so that paddles presumably are a little less powerful getting into the pros' hands.
And just to recap for folks, deflection is really that static weight that's sort of placed on the face, and they're measuring how that face deforms under that pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a dynamic ball launching force that people are waiting for.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, several podcasts ago, I had some footage where I visited Pickle Pro Labs while we were in Dallas, and they let me look at their deflection machine and testing. They tested our paddles, Chris and mine and Braden's. It's basically a weight, and then they measure how many pounds they're able to apply to get a X amount of deflection on the paddle face, right? And then that translates into this measurement. And then the spin limit is also going to be applied, and he wasn't able to give me details yet on the methodology, but they're capping spin at 2,200 RPM for the methodology that they use. Now, that doesn't mean that you can look at my database and say, oh, these ones that are above 2,200 are going to be illegal. We don't know yet. We don't know where that 2,200 RPM matches on my database. Now, clearly, it's going to correlate really well. So let's say, for example, that they're launching balls at a paddle at 45 degrees and measuring the spin. And it's gonna be some kind of standardized method like that. It's not gonna be, what I do and do 20 serves and measure, but there'll be a strong correlation with my data set. So let's say that 2,200 on their method matches 2,400 on my method.
Right.
Then you're gonna be able to understand, okay, anything above 2,400 on my database is going to be, above the legal limits and all of that. And what's something kind of exciting to me is that it's going to be based on the performance of the paddle for spin and then later exit velocity, not the materials. So they're not doing roughness tests. It's not the stare-at machine. It's not the coefficient of friction. It's you can make your paddles however you want, but they do have to pass deflection. They've got to pass this spin test. So this is going to open up a lot of innovation, I think, for surface materials. And I think that's a boon to the paddle industry because, we're kind of stuck right now with raw carbon fiber texture, which is the best right now, but it does degrade. So I think this will open up more innovation within paddle companies so that they're able to come up with different ways to achieve spin now that the rules are more open with regard to that. Okay, you can't go beyond 2,200 RPM, but
it's more about performance than construction.
Yeah, I think that's exciting.
We could see something different in the way of cores as well.
Yeah, sure. In terms of deflection, right? And I talked to him about, what's coming. Those are the two things right now, deflection and spin. This is the interim program, what's going to happen in 2025 when the real program kicks off. And they are working on an exit velocity test as well. And he couldn't give me details on it. But yeah, again, it's definitely going to be a cannon firing at paddles. There's a lot more behind that. It's not some of the things he told me that I can't really repeat. And it sound pretty exciting. Hopefully they're able to make that happen, by 2025. So there will be an exit velocity limit, and similar to spin, it's going to be based on performance and not materials.
And that will replace the deflection test.
It'll replace the deflection test.
Gotcha.
The deflection is an indirect measure of exit velocity. So yeah, that's what I got from Jason. And like you said, it's only for the pro game for 2025 also. Eventually, they're looking to expand to amateur levels. Now, one issue is going to be, okay, since the requirements for the UPA are different and more stringent than USAP, in 2025, you're not going to be able to. The pros aren't going to be able to play with USAP approved paddles at a PPA or MLP event. It'll have to be a UPA. And I'm pretty sure that USAP will not allow UPA approved paddles, certified paddles in their tournaments. So at the APP and the few tournaments that are sanctioned by USAP for amateurs. So presumably, I think the solution to this is going to be that paddle companies that want to play both in the PPA, MLP, and have a wide distribution to amateurs are going to have to do both certifications, right? USAP and UPA. So, yeah, that's kind of currently where it's at. And I think, kind of the goal, this wasn't stated by Jason, but I would imagine that UPA's goal is to kind of be the premier certification and be kind of ubiquitous in 2026 onward when they're looking for the amateur paddles as well, not just pro paddles. But we'll see how things shake out.
Did you and Jason talk at all about where that 2,200 number came from? And
I think a little bit, and it was basically, all right, they're testing. They haven't tested every paddle on the market right now. They're still kind of testing, but that's where they're seeing kind of the upper limit right now on paddles that are roughly within that Starrett roughness reading, right? And the performance level with that spin isn't anything absurd that's going to change the nature of the game.
I feel like where it is today is
like the
pretty much a top level
spinniest paddle. Yeah, like the stuff that's 2,300 to 2,400 on my database is about where I think it's going to be capped. So that's that.
Very cool. Looking forward to hearing more about that spin test.
Yeah, me too. Jason did say that, closer to the end of the year, maybe early 2025, if I wanted to, we could go out and take a look at their lab in Florida and, actually see how they're measuring exit velocity. And the hopes are that, all of my data is going to correlate anyway with their spin, with their exit velocity in terms of my, my firepower metrics and all of this. It's going to correlate, but I'd love to be able to, if it's affordable, to either approximate their exit velocity test or actually duplicate it. Right?
Outright.
Yeah, so we'll see. It'll be fun to go visit and see what they're doing. Same with USAP. Yeah, so if
I'm good for a trip.
If anybody from USAP is listening, I'd love to know how they're doing their exit velocity test too. Apparently it's different, and how the two compare, and if they're willing, invite us on out.
Right on.
Come and take a look at their laboratory.
I'll pack my bag.
All right, Eddie. Let's get past the next one and get into paddles of the week.
Right on.
Yeah. So this week we wanted to test out the quiet paddles. So we're looking at a new one that's dropping tomorrow from Diadem, the Diadem Hush, and comparing that to the only other quiet approved paddle right now, so the Owl. I think there's been a bit of buzz about the Hush. They've certainly advertised it, that it's coming, but it's not actually released yet. By the time this AirPod,
tomorrow, you said?
By the time this pod airs tomorrow, it will be up. And I was thinking about doing a dedicated review. I might do a first look, but we'll talk about it pretty in depth right now, so you'll have an idea. And then the other one I wanted to talk about today was the Ace Heart, which is also not released yet. I think it's coming in a couple of weeks. It'll be released, but that one is by the brand Ace, and I haven't spoken about them yet. I have had their paddles for a while now. They're older models. This one's very interesting in the fact that it has what looks like a Gen-3 foam perimeter. So instead of just the sides and the top, like the JOOLA Gen-3s, it goes all the way around, almost like a floating core, right? So you've got your edge foam, and then you got an interior layer of foam, and then your polypropylene inside of that. So really curious on how that one performed. So you and I got to hit with both of them today. Well, you didn't get a chance to hit one of them today, that Ace, right?
Ace, right.
Yeah, but I've been hitting with it for the past couple weeks, so I've got some.
Maybe I'll put something in the comments later.
There we go.
I hit it.
Yeah. But yeah, well, let's start with the quiet paddles. So I hit both today. I've hit with this Hush now for the last couple of weeks too. You've hit with the Hush today, and you hit with the Owl.
Maybe a month and a half ago. It's been a while.
And we have not spoken about, did we talk about it on the pod?
Maybe for a very brief amount of time.
Yeah. So thoughts, Eddie? How do you compare these two? What are your initial thoughts?
They're definitely quiet. I mean, they do what they say they're going to do. Much, much quieter. And that is really, they're designed for these communities where noise is a problem. Mm-hmm. But there's a real advantage to using these things anywhere in that the power coming out of these paddles is not reflective of the noise they make. And that takes people by surprise. Mm-hmm. Maybe not a lasting effect, but man, you show up at a court with one of these, and if people aren't used to it,
right,
they're expecting a big sound when you make a big swing, and it doesn't come, and you can really get one over on people.
100%. One thing to mention is that both are USAP approved. The OWL is originally a USAP Quiet approved, and then it was broadened to also be able to play in tournaments, USAP sanctioned tournaments, which is interesting because it definitely does not pass a deflection test because it has basically this felty layer all around it, including the edges, and it gets wicked spin because it
makes for a very spinny paddle.
Yeah, I did. It is up on my database. I think it's right at the 2400 boundary, so one of the higher spinny.
I believe it.
Paddles versus the Hush, which is USAP Quiet approved only, so you're not able to play with the Hush in sanctioned USAP tournaments. But it does have that USAP stamp, which gives it some legitimacy for rec play, which I think is a problem for the Hush in particular.
It could be a problem.
I don't want to see like 6'4", 220-pound athletes that are 4.0 and above, or any level for that matter, swinging for the fences with that paddle because it is ridiculous for the power. So can I see that real quick?
Yeah, it is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, in their marketing material, they say it's like hitting the mute button. I think a better metaphor is like it's putting a silencer on a sniper rifle.
Exactly. It's putting a silencer on a bazooka.
Exactly.
So it's not felt. It does have an edge guard. It's thermoformed. I was reading about it. I don't know what the core is exactly, but this face is like some high-tech rubber polymer that they source from China, and it's got some natural grit. But I think even if it was like glass smooth, it would still rip spin because you can compress the face. Like the facing material is soft, like really soft rubber.
It feels a little like a yoga mat if you're familiar with that.
That's a good comparison.
It's not spongy, but it's definitely got some give to it.
Yeah.
It grabs balls.
There's a ton of dwell time and a ton of action off of this. So I actually did run the metrics on this. It is at the 100th percentile for spin. Guess what the average spin was on this?
I'm going to say high 24s. 25 maybe.
2,600.
Okay, that's getting a little crazy.
That jumped like 200 above the previously highest spinning paddles.
So
right?
100 on spin.
Yeah, 100 percentile on spin, 100th percentile on power, 99th percentile on pop. And combined into that firepower metric, it's at 100th percentile. The average surf speed was over 62 miles an hour with this, which that's higher than EVA foam paddles, which are not USAP sanctioned for tournament play. It's higher than anything else. So this is currently the hottest and spinniest paddle on the market. Is it fun? Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's probably the most I've had with a paddle lately.
It's fun if you're the only one on the court with it.
Agreed.
If there were 3 other people on the court with it.
All right, look, I'm a little guy, right?
Uh-huh.
I like to drive the ball, but I'm not a hard. I'm not a hard.
You drive hard with this. It's insane.
We played a little bit today, and I body bagged you guys a couple times from my baseline.
From the baseline, it's So you don't hear it coming off. So your ears are tuned in. Your brain is tuned into hearing a high-pitched pop and getting ready for a speedy ball. This just comes off with no sound almost, and it's on you before you know it. And there's so much spin on it.
It's diving.
Like once you hit me with like 4 in a row, I couldn't get to him. I just whiffed him, and the winning point for the game. You hit one. It had so much spin that I had to paddle in the right spot. I anticipated it, and it just dipped below my paddle. The last second, it just went boom, like curveball. It was insane. I played with this too. I would not speed up on anybody at the kitchen with it out of mercy because I was also body bagging people from the baseline. It sneaks up on everybody, and it's just like
honestly, it snuck up on me, and I was using it, and I almost took your head off.
Yeah, there was one errant shot that caught me in the bill, and I was like, "Oh my god!" My life just flashed in front of my eyes.
I am so sorry about that.
Hey, it's one of the things with this paddle. So again, don't if you want to have fun and everybody's in on it. Yeah, get your friends to buy one. Have a crazy mini tennis game, but don't if you're like an athlete.
Why would they make such a
playing
thing?
at high level? Well, I understand. Like if you're if you have something, you're older, you're not as strong, you're getting wrecked by bangers at the court. Level the playing field. Go get one of these. That would be awesome to watch, right?
Get yourself a sniper rifle.
Like a 70-year-old woman beating up on some 30-year-old guys with this, or not beating up, but leveling the playing field. But that's where I draw the limit. Like if this takes you to a level where you're just creaming everybody else on the court,
don't use it.
Don't use it. That's
it's
not a good
bringing
move.
an F-18 to a knife fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So interesting, a lot of fun, but use it cautiously, do that.
It takes some skill to wield.
Yeah, God, I would hate to see like a 3.5 level, like if you can't control it at your level and it's coming at my face, imagine the stray balls and it could seriously injure somebody, even put somebody's eye out, at 60 miles an hour plus.
You'll put your eye out.
You'll put your eye out.
The owl is also very spinny, but not near the power and pop of...
Owl's way more muted. You can get some. It was more powerful than I expected. One thing about the owl that I can't stand is the handle. Like they've got super soft inserts, and like it's so spongy. Not only that, but they've got like a piece of plastic covering the edge because it's Gen 1. Mm-hmm. But that plastic edge is so sharp because there's such a contrast between that hard plastic and the foam, and it actually hurts your hand.
Oh yeah,
they need to fix that. That's not a good handle design.
It goes from sharp to squishy.
Yeah, it's not a good feel. Otherwise, and that's the only shape that I know of that, unless they've released a new one that I didn't know about. That's an elongated. This one is also elongated.
I think they do have some other models now.
Okay. Well, that's right. I think they do have a standard shape. So, Owl, I'd say that's a legitimate paddle. It definitely gets top tier spin, mm-hmm. and that's what I was using that against you today when you were playing with
you got me a couple times.
And I was like, the only advantage that I have with, not even advantage because this one gets better spin, but I'm just gonna rip top spin serves as hard as I can. And you can get a lot of dip on with the Owl. So yeah, I think that's fair that it's tournament legal. It doesn't provide that big of an advantage in terms of spin, and so pretty powerful.
For what they're designed to do, which is be quiet,
they succeeded.
Very effective.
Yeah. I did chat with Diadem also about the Hush, and I asked if the goal was actually to eventually make it a broader certification so you could play with it in tournaments. They said yes, and they'd be working with USAP on how to get it to that point.
Did they say anything about the core? Because that cannot be just a straight poly core.
I think I asked, but I haven't got an answer yet.
Okay.
So I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it if it was like EVA or some kind of other high type foam. But crazy stuff. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the Ace Heart real quick.
Yeah, I'll hit this one later this week. And
yeah. So this,
thoughts.
like I said, this has the kind of the Gen 3 foam floating core concept. It's polypropylene in the center, edge foam on the far edges, and then a layer of foam on the interior going all the way down to the handle. And I was expecting, and this is 15 or 14 millimeter, a little thinner than normal. I think pretty sure it's 14. And I was expecting this thing to play really hot like the JOOLA Gen 3s. Mm-hmm. It's the elongated shape like the Perseus. But it didn't. It plays nice, but it's very much more muted than I was expecting for a floating core paddle. Does not play like the Gearbox, does not play like the JOOLA Gen 3s or the JOOLA Mod TA-15. Those are all top tier power. This one is much more muted. I'd call it like a control-oriented Gen 3 paddle because it does have that nice feel you get from the foam-enhanced paddles.
Right.
All right? And it's got it's not quite as low of a tone when you hit the ball as the Gen 3s or the Gearboxes. A little pingier, but it is lower in tone than pure polypropylene. And it's, yeah, like I said, it's got that nice plush feel. So it's kind of an interesting space to occupy in paddles right now, being a control-oriented Gen 3, because I do feel like it has a broader sweet spot than Gen 2s slightly. It does definitely benefit from edge tape. So I've got the tungsten tape, 0.5 grams per inch, going from the top of the handle all the way up past the middle point of the paddle from here all the way down to here, because it was twisting quite a bit because it is a thinner.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
core.
about that because, well, although I haven't played with this one, the other models from this company, I struggled finding the sweet spot.
That's
But
right. We did play with those
It sounds
before.
like it's a little bit improved.
Yeah. I'd say that, comparing it directly to a 14 millimeter thermoform Gen 2 paddle, it's a broader sweet spot, a more pleasant feel overall,
Okay.
but there's still a twisting issue stock. That's once you shore that up with perimeter weighting, feels really good. Like I kind of like it. It's not my shape anymore, but if I was a control-oriented player, and it's not that you don't get power with this. If you really crank up a swing, you can hit it pretty hard. But man, the control at the kitchen's really
All right.
nice with it.
Very good.
Really good spin too. I think all of them had a really good spin, including the older models we
I
tested.
do remember that.
But that's top tier spin. I think it's around 2300 together with the plusher feel and the enhanced foam performance. Top contender, I'd say, for a control paddle these days.
Nice.
Yeah. I'd probably classify it as all court leaning control. So not what I expected, but a pleasant diversion from what I expected.
Very good. Well, like I said, I'll hit it a little bit this week and provide some thoughts.
Awesome.
In the meantime, you want to get into some deep dive?
Let's go deep dive on
All
Eddie. So, hand speed index is out. We talked about that last week, and I
Right.
put up the 3 indices. So we have the wrist dominant movements, we got the elbow dominant movements, and then the shoulder dominant movements. And you can go to graffiti.com. He's got a calculator there. You can enter the metrics and get your own calculation of those indices. But I realized that, man, that's a lot. It's a lot of data. It's very granular. Not many people are going to really want that level. And it'd be nice to have just a single score for hand speed. So I made that. I did that today, updated the database,
All right.
and put it up there. And what I did was weighted each of those 3 indices and then converted that into a score of 1 to 100, with lower scores meaning more maneuverable and higher scores meaning less maneuverable, more heavy, if you would.
So how did you break down the 3 factors that you had in the previous?
So I played around with it a lot until it kind of started matching. So this is tapping into the real formula that Brian Fitzpatrick from Graffiti calculated on how many watts it takes to
Yep.
flip a paddle 180 degrees. So it's real data, but once you get those percentiles for each of those indices, then I weighted each one differently until it started aligning with how I know the paddles perform, particularly the same paddle stock versus with just perimeter weighting versus perimeter weighting plus the slice cap on the base of the handle. And I got it dialed in, I think, right where it should be. And the weighting is 60% wrist, 30% elbow, and 10% shoulder. Because it goes back to that hammer analogy. So if you hold a hammer the right way, like you're hammering nails in, it feels very heavy, but there's a lot of power. You flip it around and you hold it backwards, it feels so much lighter in your hands, because I think the human brain is conditioned to focus more on wrist movement than other movement. I think just we're moving our wrists more. Like when we're manipulating objects, our wrists are more involved than the shoulder. Nobody walks around, holding stuff like this. So that plays a bigger influence on your perception and also the performance of the paddle. So what that's showing is like if you're able to add weight to the base of the handle with the slice cap or wrapping tungsten around the base under your wrap, and then counterbalance it with perimeter weighting, the hand speed actually increases or stays the same as the same paddle with just perimeter weighting on it. So it's tapping into that. Okay, we definitely know that lowering the balance point increases whip.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So go look at that metric. You know, it's fun to kind of compare paddles that you know and see. Okay, this is based on real data, the watts required to flip a paddle 180 degrees on those three movements. And if you want more granular data, it's going to be there too, including in the new data metrics that we're having with the new.
So here's a question for you.
Yes.
Theoretically, if I know my game, what if I'm not the type of person that uses my hand and wrist a lot? I'm actually more elbow because I don't know, maybe I've got an injury or something.
Right.
Can I manipulate the breakdown to be something different than 60? What was it? 60.
Yeah, 60, 30, 10.
60, 30, 10.
You could do it yourself, sure,
Yeah,
because the
okay.
data's there and it's a simple calculate. You could do it without even translating it to a scale of 1 to 100. You just multiply the percentile column for wrist by point whatever. So in my case, I did it 0.6.
Right. Yep.
Multiply the
Okay.
elbow column by 0.3 and the shoulder column by 0.1. It spits out the same percentage, and you just add those three after you multiply it to get them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Simple calculation. You can do it yourself. Play around with it until it matches your reality and performance. Right.
Perfect.
Alrighty, Eddie, we've got a couple of questions you chose this week.
Yeah, from last week's podcast. Question 1. So we've talked about break-in, especially on the Gen-3s and a little bit on the Gearbox, but let's focus in on the JOOLAs for now. Since there's apparently a break-in period with the Gen-3s, with the new Mod TA-15, are you looking at measuring them again after rigorous use to really compare?
Yeah, for sure. I've been playing a lot with it, actually. I've been testing paddles so much lately that I haven't played much with my main, which is the shapeshifter. And I've gotten used to the Perseus shape of the Mod TA-15. I still think that it plays exactly the same as the Perseus Gen 3 with a little less aggressive texture. It feels much
But you
smoother.
noticed that there was a power difference after break-in on the Gen 3s.
Absolutely. There's a power difference. There's a break-in period. I've played with this now for a couple of weeks, pretty consistent. I'd say, there's a subtle increase in power, a subtle break-in. And I still want to continue playing with it, or at least give it to somebody, a hard hitter. The question is, okay, is it a break-in period, or is it a path to breaking? Not breaking in, but breaking. So is it becoming core crushed and core corrupted? So we saw that being an issue shortly before the JOOLA Gen 3s were delisted.
Yeah.
So there were several instances of core corrupted paddles, including mine. I had my Colin Johns corrupted. Didn't your Anna Bright also?
I could not tell if it was a core crushing or a foam degradation.
Okay. So there were issues. Yeah. And I will look into it and report back whether or not I will say, I'm not saying that these aren't going to break, because we don't know. There were signs that the Gen 3s were breaking. This plays exactly like a Gen 3, so I have some concern with this. But I took off the grip and to put in a slice cap. By the way, I highly recommend using a slice cap on the Perseus mod. And man, the handle is so much better constructed. It just looked really nice compared to the Gen 3s. Remember the Gen 3s had that sharp bevel? None of us like that. You take the wrap off and it just looks kind of cheap. The inserts didn't fit. They were a little too wide.
Yeah.
This one is really well done. It's got like a mesh wrap really tight around the handle. All the pieces fit perfectly. And they've done a new thing where the unibody design with that edge seam of carbon fiber that wraps around. I've never seen this done on any other paddle that's thermoform, but it goes all the way down the side and across the bottom of the handle and then back up. So it literally is one piece, one strip of carbon fiber. I've never seen it go across the bottom of a thermoform paddle. So also the grid on this is much more consistent. Now, clearly sample size n=1. I don't know that there's any variability. I can't speak to that, but so far I'd say that the mods look higher quality and there's more QC than the Gen 3s. But I will report back on whether or not it breaks in.
And this
at
was
what
your
level.
personally purchased paddle. This wasn't something specially sent to
Exactly.
reviewers.
Exactly. And this is the 16 millimeter, not also by the 14 millimeter. I know Chris Olsen did. So I'm pretty sure he's going to have a first impressions. I'm still debating on whether or not I want to release. I think I will. I'll do a video, a first impressions review of the mod.
Let me tell you, it's just as distressing to play against you with this paddle as it was with any Gen 3. I mean, when I go to your body and you just punch it, like do a 2-inch punch,
Yeah.
it comes back 3 times faster, and that is just, it's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same ethical issue also, except not nearly as extreme with
I don't know. Feel the
hush.
stream on my end.
Right. No, I mean,
receiving end.
The hush was is way too powerful for standard competition. It would definitely change the nature of the game. We've had this debate. I feel like now that I've played with the YOOLA Gen 3s and then stopped playing with them, went back to normal paddles, and now I'm playing with the mod, which is basically the Gen 3 again. I'm kind of the opinion that I don't want that level of power on the court consistently. It's fun when you're the only one on the court with it, but if everybody else has it, and the pro games, even with the level of power just below the Gen 3s, pro games are changing. It's almost the first person to speed up is nearly guaranteed to win. So Zane on Dink actually had a really good point where one of the reasons he thinks that Riley Newman has slipped in the rankings is not doing so well is he's been most affected by the increase in power and pop on paddles, because he used to be able to get back nearly everything hit at him. He was the reset and defense king, and not so much anymore because that subtle difference. We're inching up in power and pop, and you and I have witnessed it on the court. Just a little, like a half a mile an hour difference in speed can sneak up on you a lot faster than that half a mile an hour seems on paper. So I think Riley's not able to keep up and reset it as much, and the first people to speed up, and we're seeing that the hands battles reduce in excitement because it goes 1, 2, sometimes 3, and then it's done. Either they hit it out or it hits the body or it's a clean winner, right? So I think that, back to the point, I think the Gen 3s are probably, in my opinion, above where I'd want to see the sport go. It's not a bash on YOOLA. They're providing exactly what the market wanted. But, if I had the option, not thinking about the livelihood of YOOLA or what happened between USAP and YOOLA, I would personally draw the line just below the Gen 3s. So maybe the YOOLA 3Ss are going to be that sweet spot that I want, at least.
Wait and see.
What about you, Eddie? Do you have an opinion on where power should be kept?
Well, definitely somewhere beneath the hush.
Just bring a racquetball racket out on the court, for God's sake.
For both spin and power.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too much. I would agree with you on the Gen 3s. They're just too much. And the Gearbox to some extent.
Yeah. The Ultimate is definitely toned down a bit, and that might be there.
I still feel like that's...
I think that's over the where
line.
it should be, yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of Gearbox, our last question from the podcast last week, actually not a question, more of a comment, was that Gearbox needs to make a wide body ultimate power paddle. Why does that not exist?
I'm preaching to the choir. If you go look at my review, that was my one main complaint about the Ultimate is, yeah, this is nice and cool that they were able to tweak all these things with the SST core and, get the sweet spot wider, change the modulus, make it feel better. But why are we dealing with this shape still? It's narrow, it's elongated, but it's too narrow. And some people love it. I get that, but my God, that thing would be so amazing if it was a wide body.
Could be so much better.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I realize that that's a personal bias. Like I've kind of watched the trend going wider and wider, and I love it. Not everybody does, but I think the majority of people would benefit from a wider Ultimate, which I think it's in the works. I think Raphael, even before my review, was thinking about different shapes.
That's worth waiting for then.
Oh yeah,
because I've played with the Ultimate for a little bit now. It's a great paddle. If it had, it's even greater with weight, right? And you've talked about that in your video as well. It just pushes out that sweet spot a little bit. If it could be that way, stock with a wide body, you're onto something.
Yeah, 100%. So if you're interested and you don't like the shape, wait a little while. Hopefully it's not going to be another year.
Gearbox customer service, is that what we're
right. But hopefully they come out with a I think it not only needs to be a wide body, but also a longer handle.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah, that's just kind of the new era of paddles. Most people use two hands to some extent, and it provides better leverage. You're able to tap into that power more efficiently and effectively.
That's my quote-unquote sweet spot right now is a 5.5 to 5.75 inch handle. 6 inches is too long.
Yeah.
The waist of paddle face, but I think that's where we're at.
That would be sweet.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
Well,
any
that's
others?
it for the Q&A for this week, John.
And that wraps up our segments this week.
Tight.
Yes, I think we're on point here. Like an hour in.
All right. We'll do it again next week.
All right, Eddie. Good to see you, man. And I will see you next week.
Take care.